So hi Parhakoos, how are you doing? I hope you're doing well. So this video is about the fifth property of system of numbers, that is the inverse property. So let's first see what does the word inverse means. The word inverse means opposite. So inverse property of any number is the opposite of that number, right? Or you can say reciprocal of that number. So now I hope that this would make it easy for you to understand it further. So there are two types of inverse, basically additive inverse and multiplicative inverse. So additive inverse is such kind of number which is opposite, and when it is added or subtracted from a number, it yields 0, or it makes the number 0. Now what does it mean? Let's see. Let's suppose I have got a number 6. The additive inverse, that means the opposite of this number, is minus 6. If you have a number line, so if this way is plus 6, then the going opposite is negative 6. So it is negative 6 is opposite of positive 6. Now how can we ensure that something is opposite? So when I add them together, that means 6 minus 6. If there is nothing, there is positive, So plus 6 minus 6 would give me 0. That means they are inverse of each other. They both have nullified each other or cancel out each other. So negative 6 is basically the additive inverse of positive 6. So we can generically write it as, if n is any number, then negative n is going to be the inverse, the additive inverse of it. And when they are added or subtracted together, it would give us 0. Let's see one more case. If we have negative 2, then the opposite or the additive inverse would be 2, and the sign would be opposite, that would be plus. So when they are added or subtracted together, it would give us 0. It would nullify each other. So these are additive inverse of each other. The second kind of inverse is the multiplicative inverse. Multiplicative inverse is also a reciprocal or opposite of any number. So any number multiplied by its reciprocal gives 1. Remember, here in additive inverse, it yields 0, and the multiplicative inverse yields 1. How? Let's see. Let's suppose an example 6. The multiplicative inverse of 6 is 1 upon 6. As you all know that addition, the reciprocal of addition is subtraction. Similarly, the reciprocal of multiplication is division. So if I want to nullify this thing, I need to divide, right? So we will multiply it with 1 upon 6. So 6 and 6 would nullify one another, and we would left with 1. So the multiplicative inverse of 6 is 1 upon 6. And if we have 1 upon 6, the multiplicative inverse would be 6. You just have to make sure that whenever you multiply each other, you would come up with 1. So generically we can rewrite it as, If n is any general number, there is number n, the multiplicative inverse would be 1 upon n, which would end up giving us 1. And if we have 1 upon n, then the multiplicative inverse would be n and would nullify to give us 1. Okay, now let's do some practice. Now pause the video and try for yourself the additive inverse in the following problems and multiplicative inverse. Just pause the video and try and check your understanding. I hope that now you have got the idea because it's quite easy. So additive inverse is anything which when you add in that would give you 0. This is the one way you can understand, or the other way is that the opposite of that number. So here we have this is positive 3, so opposite would be negative 3, right? So when you add them together, so it would give you 0. The additive inverse of minus x would be, since it's minus, the opposite of minus is plus, and x would remain x. Positive xy, the opposite would be negative xy. Negative 100, the opposite would be positive 100. Now let's try for the multiplicative inverse. So as I said, you can understand that multiplicative inverse is the opposite, and the opposite of multiplication is division, and we will take it in that form. Okay, multiplicative inverse is that value which when multiplied to that number, to the given number, it yields 1, right? So the multiplicative inverse of p would be 1 upon p. It is opposite of p when it comes to multiplication, because multiplication's opposite is division, so we have to give it that form. So when you process them together, p and p nullifies, so 1 is remaining. So this is the multiplicative inverse, 1 upon q. So since it's in division form, so inverse would be q. Negative 3, so it would be 1 upon 3. Negative 1, so it would be negative 1 upon 3. So when you process them, negative 3 into negative 1 upon 3, 3 and negative 3 would nullify each other and will be left with 1. Remember, here sign would remain same, only it would get reciprocal. So it's negative 1 upon 4. So the multiplicative inverse would be negative 4. So I hope that now it's very clear what the inverse property is. Have a happy learning. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.